everyone. We can't blame people who are using ChatGPT. It's not their fault.
Oh, of course it's not their fault. It's never anyone's fault when a new technology shows up and we collectively dive headfirst into using it like it's a cure for everything wrong with our lazy lives. Let's be real. Humans see a new shiny tool and the first thing we do is figure out how to mess with it. It's like when Tay Tweets was released in 2016. It took Twitter users less than 16 hours to turn a nice Twitter bot into a racist, misogynistic robot, so badly that Microsoft had to shut it down. It did leave us with some comedic gold to talk about for years later, though. Now, South Park is different. They don't have any problems with offending everybody. They do that plenty. Their episode did shine a light on AI and how using it with everyday tasks could either make or break our lives, whether it be for school, work, or even romance. The real question is, are we gonna sit back and let AI write our texts, do our homework, and eventually take our place at Thanksgiving dinner with the in-laws? Or do we have to draw the line before it starts having better conversations with your partner than you do? South Park's episode of Deep Learning kicks off with the girls standing around in the playground. Bebe is head over heels for Clyde because of his super romantic texts. She texted Clyde asking him if he thought about her all the time, to which he responded,
"It certainly seems like all the time. It's hard to get someone like you out of my mind."
Which is pretty sweet if it came out of Clyde's heart. The girls seem to love it.
Aww. Doesn't he just send the best texts ever?
But it stings Wendy.
Clyde wrote that?
Not because she doesn't think Clyde is sweet, or because she suspects Clyde is using ChatGPT, but because Stan texts like my dad does.
Every time I send Stan a text, he just responds with a thumbs up emoji.
Now, at this point, I thought to myself, I completely understand Wendy, but I also completely understand Stan myself, as I'm terrible at texting. I recently looked back at my old iMessage conversations from over like 5 years ago, and let me tell you, I now completely understand why I wasn't getting dates back then. My replies were as dry as the Atacama Desert. The amount of times I texted haha or ah, thinking I was genuinely having a nice conversation with the girl I liked, were higher than I'd like to admit, to the point that I'm actually thinking about using ChatGPT to reply to texts after watching South Park, unironically. Which is what we see Stan doing. After having a talk with Wendy about his weak responses, he goes up to Clyde to ask for advice.
Hey, Clyde, can I talk to you?
After explaining to Clyde that Wendy wants him to text just like Clyde texts Bebe, Clyde drops the bomb on Stan.
ChatGPT, dude.
Something Stan is completely unaware of. Now, like most people nowadays, ChatGPT is there to do a lot of everyday tasks for you. Like writing job applications, placing comments under a YouTube video, and arguing with strangers on Reddit. But using it to text girls? That's something I haven't tried. Yet. We should, because according to Clyde,
But what they're really good for is dealing with chicks.
Clyde then shows Stan how easy it is. Every time he gets a text from Bebe, he just copies it, pastes it in ChatGPT, and whatever the reply is, he just sends it back to Bebe.
Cut, paste, right? Cut, messages, paste, send. There.
Now, this seems like a game of Russian roulette to me. Sending texts back and forth without proofreading them, especially if it's about your girl who wants to cut her hair short, or your boyfriend who wants to shave his beard. You could very much be in for a surprise if you let ChatGPT make that decision. I personally probably wouldn't use it for any close relationships. It would inevitably lead to a disconnect because of a lack of authentic engagement. If everyone would do that, it would turn into a completely dehumanized digital world full of superficial connections until your personal AI goes on full-blown Tay Tweets genocidal warlord by accident. But using it to get dates? That's where it's interesting. Is it ethical? Probably not. But hey, if it works, why not? You're just a curator of conversation. It's not like we've ever misused technology before, right? There's even an app dedicated to it. One of the more popular ones is Riz app. For those out of the loop like myself, Riz app is essentially an AI dating assistant app that analyzes screenshots of conversations you're having on platforms, from Tinder to iMessage, and crafts reply suggestions to make you better at flirting and getting dates. It already has a total user base of 7.5 million people to date, experiencing a 30% month-over-month growth. So it's safe to say it's not just Clyde or me. There's a big group of users out there, and they keep growing. Stan takes Clyde's advice and starts using ChatGPT to rizz up Wendy, and it works. We see a montage of Wendy head over heels for Stan, finally feeling loved. On the other hand, Stan is just going through life, copying and pasting every message he gets into ChatGPT and replying to Wendy with whatever ChatGPT tells him to reply with. A modern-day Romeo and Juliet. Until the inevitable happens.
Hey, Stan, I didn't get it yet.
Wendy gives Stan a call because she is waiting on the bedtime story he promised, which Stan is not aware of.
Oh, yeah, I wrote it. I'll send it to you right now.
Of course, he then gets ChatGPT to write one and sends it over to Wendy. Once again, this is South Park lampooning the pitfalls of overusing AI for everyday tasks. But it doesn't just stop there, because what else could ChatGPT do for us? The scene cuts back to the classroom where students are chatting and getting into their seats, and Mr. Garrison has graded their midterm essays. First up, he was really surprised with Clyde's essay on the topic of
the 1840s labor unions and their effect on the Industrial Revolution,
or Butter's amazing essay on post-Cold War Poland and the changing provision of security. But it gets even better with another shockingly good paper.
This one's called A Feminist Neoliberal Perspective of Post-War Afghanistan by Eric Cartman.
Now, we all know Cartman would never write anything from a neoliberal feminist perspective, so it should have rung a bell with Mr. Garrison. But we have to give props to Cartman for getting away with it. So let's be real. If Cartman can pass off a deep, nuanced essay as his own work, what does that say about education today? In a world where you can outsource your homework to AI, the line between learning and laziness is starting to blur. Why study hard when you can just type, "Write me an essay about insert complex topic here," and watch as the magic unfolds on your screen? That's the challenge education is facing nowadays, and it's a complex challenge. So what are most of the pros and cons about it? Let's first continue with the cons for a change. One of the biggest concerns remains the diminishment of critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Think about it. If a student can just plug any question into ChatGPT and get a polished response faster than they can win a sniper's only 1v1 in Rust, what happens to their ability to analyze, evaluate, and think for themselves? Suddenly, the only critical thinking they engage in is deciding whether or not to hit submit on an AI-generated essay or scroll through TikTok for 5 more hours. And it doesn't stop there. Creativity takes a nosedive when students rely on ChatGPT's pre-written responses. Education is supposed to be about learning to use your brain, how to think and reason, etc., in addition to gaining knowledge and skills to think and do with. Using AI to do the work for you cheats the system and yourself long term. That brings us to the biggest winner in this whole fiasco: laziness. Students who know they can crank out assignments with the help of ChatGPT may quickly become the couch potatoes of academia, or binge YouTube videos on South Park. If that's the case, I'm all up for it. Then there's another fun twist. Studies have shown that using AI and cognitive offloading can lead to a decline in memory retention. So while students might be nailing their assignments, they'll be saying goodbye to actually remember anything they've learned. Oh, I aced the history test. Now, what was the name of the dinosaur that has 500 teeth again? Napoleon? Mosasaurus? Then there's the bias, errors, isolation, cheating, outdated information, and finally, AI could be taking teachers' jobs, which in turn could reduce the teacher and student abuse scandals. It could also relocate them. You pick your opinion here. But AI does make life a lot easier. So why should schools allow ChatGPT or other forms of artificial intelligence? AI can personalize learning experiences by adapting to individual students' needs and pace, providing tailored educational materials and challenges. It can offer additional resources that teachers are unable to provide. Now, I don't want to stretch this part out too much, so I'll summarize and nuance it a lot. It's a lot more efficient for both teachers and students. AI will be more integrated into society and employment, meaning having worked with AI will be a plus when finding a new job. There's plenty more pros and cons, but in the end, we've simply gotten to a point in time that there is no going around it anymore. Even though ChatGPT has been banned by a lot of school districts, students will always find a way to cheat. The arguments against it are the same arguments that were made when schools tried to ban access to calculators in the 1970s, computers in the 1980s, and the internet in the 1990s. The calculator eliminated tedium and inefficiency, empowering students to engage in higher-order mathematical thinking. The advent of the word processor liberated writing instruction from the mechanics of cursive, grammar, and spelling so that students were able to unleash their creativity and imagination on the page. Early computer games like the Oregon Trail and Carmen Sandiego brought history to life. and by opening up the archive of human knowledge, the internet transformed how students conduct research, access information, and understand and interpret the world. There's also studies on the negative impact of these inventions, though. Calculators made problem-solving skills limited, computers made handwriting become worse, and the internet negatively impacted individual social skills, among other things. So the concerns are definitely valid. Personally, I'm all for using ChatGPT in schools. If we can do so using the right integration, perhaps this could also be the time where we switch up the school system to go from who can memorize stuff the best to something that has a lot more practical meaning. There's many arguments and studies that claim the school system is outdated because of this centralized control, high inefficiency, and wasteful bureaucracy, among other reasons. One of the most prevalent solutions is offering a more individualistic approach to learning. Could AI offer that approach? Perhaps. Now, how do we do that? I don't know. I'm just a guy making videos about South Park. If there was a solution a regular guy like me could think of, it's probably already there. Responsibly integrating AI should start with investing in proper oversight procedures and professional development for educators. But enough about that. Let's get back to South Park for now. The knowledge of the mere existence of ChatGPT is treated like the spice melange by the boys. Eric is protecting AI like his life depends on it. After Clyde confesses he told Stan so that he could use it to text Wendy, Eric freaks out.
This can't be open source, you guys! If everyone starts using ChatGPT, then we lose our unfair advantage!
After discussing it for a bit, the boys settle on not telling anybody else and go about their business. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Garrison gets a revelation.
Oh, God, I can't take it, Rick.
Rick asks him what's up, and Garrison explains that something's changed, and now a few of the kids are writing really long, detailed essays which he has to grade.
Have you ever heard of ChatGPT?
He explains to Mr. Garrison that there's an AI nowadays which can instantly give any kind of content he wants. And with that, Mr. Garrison creates exactly what society fears most.
I'll just type the title of the essay in and it'll generate a comment. I don't even have to read the stupid things.
That will make the circle go round. The kids will create essays using ChatGPT, and Mr. Garrison will then use ChatGPT to rate them. As on the romance front, things are getting real between Stan and Wendy. Except, Stan has no idea what she's talking about. Their deep, meaningful connections have all been orchestrated by ChatGPT. Wendy starts getting emotional, mentioning some traumatic event from her past that she's been afraid to talk about. But thanks to Stan's comforting words, she finally opened up.
And when you said the same thing happened to you, I couldn't believe it.
Stan can't believe it either. He awkwardly agrees, because what else is he going to do? Admit that he's been outsourcing his emotional intelligence to an algorithm? He's in way too deep. So instead, he mumbles some lame excuse to leave, but not before Wendy drops one last line on him.
Thank you so much, Stan. Thank you for being the only real thing in my life.
Back at the elementary school, everything is going down. Mr. Mackey interrupts Mr. Garrison's class for a very serious matter.
There's a rumor going around that someone at this school is using open AI technology to do their work.
Now, Mr. Garrison is in shock at the mention of someone using ChatGPT. He's even more in shock when he hears that Mr. Mackey has a solution to make sure no one is cheating in school. Their solution?
Company that can detect AI in schoolwork and make sure nobody here is cheating.
The irony of this whole situation is beautifully South Park. The students are using AI to cheat, Mr. Garrison's using AI to avoid doing his job, and in the end, it's really just a big loop of laziness. No one wants to give that up. We've talked about students, but let's also look at the teacher side of things. According to one study, just 18% of teachers report using AI in the classroom, and an additional 15% of the teachers saying they've tried to do so. They're either old school or lying. Another survey mentioned 60% of 500 educators used AI in their classrooms. The numbers seem to be wildly different, so there's really not much to conclude about it. So, would an AI detector be a solution to expose everyone that is using AI in school? First, we see that Mr. Garrison is very much against using the AI detector.
I mean, what are we saying? That we don't trust them?
His claims of the AI detector being unfair is just bogus. But there are some arguments that make a lot of sense against using AI detectors. Kids will always find a way to cheat again. There's a lot of AI rewriters out there that will rewrite a piece of text to make it seem like AI did not write it. But then again, an AI will write that, so it should be detectable by an AI detector. Which leads to the following conflict. What happens in the case of false positives? If a student is subsequently punished by claims of using AI, when genuinely not using AI, it will destroy his motivation and faith in the system. So how reliable are these detection systems? When looking into this, research seems to be all over the place. There's claims of 80% accuracy, close to 100% accuracy, but also an average accuracy of 60%. Even the most detailed study I could find notes that the effectiveness of these tools may be limited in the fast-paced world of AI evolution. Which is also the problem we see happening in South Park. The shaman-like expert is determined to find which schoolwork has been AI-generated, and like most AI detection programs, it fails to do so. After hunting in the school for a little while, Shadowbane, who's the shaman's eagle to detect AI, finds the culprit.
Get back! Get back, all of you! I have the student isolated inside!
But instead of it being Stan, Eric, Mr. Garrison, or any of the others, it's Wendy.
What is going on?
Of course, all of the ChatGPT stuff on her phone is from Stan's text, who is in even bigger crisis now. How is he going to get out of this?
I'm not creative enough to think of a way out of this. Wait, that's it.
And just like that, Stan asks ChatGPT to resolve the episode in a happy ever after way. Mr. Mackey mentions that drugs are bad, okay? And Cartman calls Stan a Jew. All in all, it is a nonsensical, robotic, and empty conclusion, which is exactly the point of this episode. South Park doesn't just poke fun at AI technology, it skewers the social norms that have quietly sprouted around it. Norms that are as absurd as they are pervasive. It's like this unspoken rule. Sure, everyone fudges their work with AI here and there, but we're all supposed to just pretend like we don't. After all, what's the harm in using AI to draft a quick email or text? But if everyone's in on the secret, then suddenly the whole house of cards start collapsing. If too many people rely on AI for everything, love, schoolwork, and even apologies for forgetting anniversaries, what happens when no one's doing the thinking anymore? It happens all around us. Your cousin's birthday message that weirdly sounded like an ad for Hallmark? AI. That LinkedIn post from your coworker that somehow referenced synergistic solutions 4 times in 2 sentences? Probably didn't write that on his own. So what do we do? Well, AI is definitely here to stay. We should embrace it as a society, just like we've embraced using calculators, computers, and the internet. It's allowed us to advance at an insanely fast pace over these last few years. Just take a look at this graph. It's taken about 15 years from the first iPhone to completely automated artificial intelligence that can do our homework. All that's left is to ask, what will the next 15 bring? If you're asking me, it's also a bit scary, and governments notice this too. That's why the EU is already putting in regulations with the development of AI. Now we're all aware of the current artificial intelligence that is widely available to us. We just don't know what's not available yet. Let's compare this to satellites. In 2019, Trump tweeted an image that left intelligence experts gobsmacked. The details were of one of America's classified multi-billion-dollar reconnaissance satellites, and how it was able to capture something so crisp that some initially thought it may have not have been taken by a satellite. Compare that to a non-classified commercial satellite, and you'll see the massive difference between the two. In other words, the technology was years ahead, and a lot of experts were not aware of its existence. The same is probably happening with AI, where we are blissfully unaware of how advanced it's getting. Once AI starts developing itself faster than we humans are able to understand its development, we're either going to be in a lot of trouble or a lot of freedom. What do you think?